All right, today a federal judge scorched the Justice Department's handling of evidence in its case against former FBI Director James Comey. The judge raised the possibility that his indictment may be, quote, tainted. CNN crime and justice correspondent Caitlin Polans joins us now. Caitlin, can you explain the judge's issues here?
Yeah, this judge in the Eastern District of Virginia, William Fitzpatrick, he's looked at the grand jury record. He's also looked at evidence in the case against James Comey, and he's seeing some issues in it, issues that Comey's team will be able to grab onto and potentially run with to the point, Casey, where they can ask and maybe even succeed in having this case dismissed against the former FBI director. The main issue the judge raises is the possibility that tainted evidence that the Justice Department shouldn't have been able to use in September when they took this indictment of James Comey to a grand jury, that they shouldn't have been able to use that evidence. It could have spoiled things. That's one possibility. The other thing that is also potentially a really big issue for the Justice Department and specifically the prosecutor on this case, Lindsay Halligan, the interim U.S. attorney, is the possibility that the judge says Lindsay Halligan misled the grand jurors about the law, that she misstated to grand jurors that Comey may need to testify at his own trial in order to win the case, and also separately that she appears to have suggested that the Justice Department had better evidence than what the grand jury was seeing that they could show at trial. Both of those things could become fatal flaws for this case, although right now Comey's team doesn't have access to these grand jury transcripts. It's just this judge that's looked at them.
And Caitlin, what happens next? There's a hearing on Wednesday?
There is a hearing on Wednesday. That's about Donald Trump's tweets. Has that set up a situation that this case will need to be tossed? Was Comey selectively and vindictively prosecuted in the legal speak here? But this other issue that is bubbling up today before Judge Fitzpatrick, that is going to be hanging over the next couple days, including this afternoon. I'm curious what's going to happen even tonight. It's only 4:30. There is a situation where the Justice Department is fighting really hard, really fast to try to keep James Comey's team from getting access to these grand jury records. They've already gone back to the court and said, we want to stop this. We don't want him to have them, because once he gets them, then James Comey's team can start picking apart the same things that this magistrate judge has already looked at and then formally asked for the case to be dismissed. Some of those filings, if they do get access to these grand jury materials, some of these filings from the defense team would be due next week, right before Thanksgiving.
All right, Caitlin Polans, thanks very much for that reporting. Really appreciate it.
The Justice Department's case against James Comey in serious jeopardy this hour. A federal judge coming out and raising concerns that the whole case could be tainted by profound missteps and government misconduct by Trump's handpicked prosecutor, Lindsay Halligan. Halligan was, of course, Trump's personal attorney who had never prosecuted a case before her role with the Justice Department. The judge is now ordering the DOJ to turn over grand jury records. Ty Cobb is out front now. He is the former Trump White House lawyer. And Ty, always grateful for your time. So when you hear what the judge raised today in terms of the questions, do you think the DOJ's case against Comey is dead?
I do. I think it's dead for two reasons. First, I think it's dead because of the illegal appointment that is before another judge, Judge Curry. But Magistrate Judge Fitzpatrick's opinion today will be taught in law schools for 50 years as the epitome of prosecutorial misconduct.
So when you know, we know the reason of this could be, right, that the prosecutor who signed off on it was not actually formally and officially the prosecutor, and no one else did, and so the whole thing might go up in smoke. That's Lindsay Halligan. Is she specifically to blame for this case falling apart?
She, in large part, yes. But this opinion today is, I mean, it's really extraordinary. Misconduct at this level is, almost never seen. And the judge was not solely focused on Ms. Halligan, but focused on the FBI's wholesale abuse of the Fourth Amendment and their rummaging around in privileged information and mishandling of the privileged information. That alone would be a basis to exclude evidence, but it's also a basis, given how intentional it was, as the judge noted, given the fact that the FBI general counsel and the agent who went into the grand jury were both informed prior to the grand jury appearance that they had been exposed to serious privileged information, and they used that to shape their presentation to the grand jury. That's fundamentally wrong. But also on the Halligan point, her time in the grand jury is extraordinary. She told the grand jury basically that Comey didn't have a Fifth Amendment right at trial to refuse to testify, and therefore he would be able to, give his explanation as to the events and counter the government's evidence, which the judge noted appropriately was burden shifting. And moreover, she told the grand jury in an extraordinary statement that not to worry about the record with which they had been presented because the government had better evidence at trial. That's like saying, please indict this person because we don't have time to indict innocent people. It's just way, way, way out of bounds. And frankly, it would be a basis to have her disbarred. And because Pam Bondi twice affirmed the legitimacy of her presentation, it would be a basis to have Bondi disbarred as well.
It's stunning. Which is really stunning. I mean, we know Halligan, of course, had not prosecuted a case before this, but to say, to put it in black and white, what the implications of that could be both for her and Pam Bondi, it is stunning. I want to ask you one other thing, Ty. Yeah, go ahead.
Aaron, if you don't mind, there is one other extraordinary event here, which is there's a missing 2 hours and 20 minutes, which puts Rosemary Woods
in the grand jury
17 minutes. Yes, and keep in mind that included the rejection of the government's initial indictment and the submission of a second indictment. There's no record of that, and the judge makes the point it's impossible to believe that there weren't communications between her and the grand jury. Where are they?
It's like, where are the missing tapes? All right, Ty, on the Epstein files, Trump obviously has done this complete 180, right? And over the weekend, I mean, he went out with a bang, right? I mean, he fought and fought and fought, and he upped the decibel level and the derogatory level against Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, until the very last second. Then he realized it was going to be the most epic, turn against him by his own party ever. And so now suddenly he's on board with the release. Okay, that is one thing. And actually seeing the files and perhaps the videos is a very different thing. So are we going to see them?
I don't think so. I think this is really a canard on his part. I think he and Bondi have determined that they'll try to use the Trump-ordered, quote, investigation, end quote, of Democrats, but not Republicans, as he stated, involving Clinton and others as a bar to producing anything. I think it'll be a long time before we ever see anything. Although there are certain documents that could be easily produced. And if Trump wanted the documents produced, he could produce them tonight. He doesn't have to wait for the
There doesn't need to be a bill.
So this is silly. Yeah, this is silly. And really, this is Trump. This is Trump, at his narcissistic worst, because it's just the mere fact he can't abide being on the losing side. He could not abide the wholesale repudiation that was headed his way tomorrow when hundreds of Republicans defected and voted to reveal these documents. So he's like the Confederate soldier in a trench with dead Union soldiers on Appomattox Day, trying on their uniforms so he can say he was on the winning side. It's sick.
Ty, thank you.
My pleasure.